if it got better or worse, but whatever.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what you're up to.
It's very mundane. I know that you have like somewhat of an appreciation of the mundane because I think one of your things on your site actually says mundane, and it's like images of that. So I love mundane shit.
Yeah.
So that being said, let's begin. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for committing to spending the entire election day on the computer until we find out who the president is.
Oh man, I would love that. Oh.
We got a lot of hours that we possibly have weeks to go. So
potentially
a long one.
Yeah. So we'll get to know each other real well.
Yes. And we can't get up. That's the deal. We have to sit. People will have to bring us food, drink, everything.
Yeah. I like that.
All right. So state your name, something about you, could be anything, hobby, job, whatever you want. And then one of your favorite books as a kid.
Oh man. Okay. My name is Ruso Margishvili. I am from Tbilisi, Georgia. And I hated reading when I was a kid. So it's really hard for me to think of a book now. I stopped reading to protest my dad, who would force me to read.
Really?
And then I had to pick it up. Like later, I gained an appreciation for books, but it was like much later than I should say.
Yeah. So your dad, I'm guessing, was like a big reader?
My dad was a big reader, and he was a pretty strict dad. So he wanted to make sure that we did our homework, that we read, that he was nurturing the intelligence. But, as a teenager, you're like, screw this, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
So I'd pretend
did his job have anything to do with reading, or was this just something he wanted to instill in you?
I guess my grandma was a professor.
Okay. All right.
So he was like, that's the kind of family I grew up in. Bunch of teachers and,
Right. That's funny because like my mom or dad really never that I can ever remember picked up a book. And I started reading at a very early age. So it's like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
They never tried to get me to read or anything. I just like was naturally attracted to it. Maybe that's why I'm like, they never read. So it must be cool.
Yeah, I see a library behind you. It looks nice.
When I look at myself in this, I'm like, I look like I live in a nice place. I really don't.
Yeah.
Speaking of places, okay, so would you let someone take 5 items from your home, whatever they wanted to, for $70,000? Now, that could be your laptop. It could be anything, an item from your childhood.
Sure. I don't have items from my childhood, which is like, I don't have physical attachment to anything I have because, I've been moving so much. I'm just like streamlining all my collections all the time.
And I'm guessing you back up everything on your computer, so that wouldn't be a huge loss.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that's an interesting question, though. Like if I was at home, I don't know because I have more like emotional attachments to things. Things that have more sentimental value. Yeah. But here I'm like, whatever.
Okay, we'll go with here for now. Yeah, we'll go with here. For now. All right, so they're going to be by tonight at like 8. All right, is that good for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds great.
So you're an architect in your day job, right?
I am.
Okay, so like I probably sound like a monkey to you then. I'm like,
no, what are you talking about?
Brain is probably huge. I know very little about architecture. I just associate it with super smart people.
There's a range of people. We all have different talents, right?
Now, the architect that like everyone knows is like Frank Lloyd Wright. Like is there someone who not many people would know that you would think the average person should know about, or maybe not should know about, but might enjoy knowing about?
Well, I mean, now I feel like with architecture, it's become, there's so many TV shows about design that it's become more and more popular, you know? So a lot of people go like, oh, like I always wanted to be an architect. And, they names drop a few, important people. There's so many architects. I mean, I feel like in general, people should know architecture because it's as important as, at least from my perspective, as important as like books. We live in cities, we live in built environments, so we should know how it works.
Yep.
And there's so much to know about it, and it's really interesting. And I mean, I might be biased.
No, I totally agree. I don't know a lot about it, but I will say that like when walking through neighborhoods, especially in New York, you could totally, I don't know like the words to describe it, but I'm like, this this person gave a shit about what this looked like. That person
and you
did
can
not.
tell.
Like,
Yeah, and
they
that
just
person
wanted to
made
get
a
it
lot of
done.
money with the developer and moved
Yeah.
on, you know.
Yep.
And there's so much thinking that goes into buildings and cities, and the more you know, more you appreciate where you live.
Yeah.
And also it also like makes you more furious in some ways. So it's, you know,
yeah, and like being such visual creatures, it does play a major role in the general vibe of an area. Like if there's really good architecture, it impacts how you feel when you're there. I know it sounds obvious, but it is important.
Right, and there are a lot of social studies done too, you know, what the built environment does to our psyche. One study that I always found interesting is, you know, how, like, for instance, in Georgia, you know, we have the settlement of refugees, and they built the housing very quickly, thinking it's a temporary thing. So they built these like rows of familiar. Oh, I'm sorry, our cats are being really loud. I don't know if you can hear them.
Okay, no bonus if that cat makes an appearance at some point.
Okay, I'm sure he will. So they built this grid with the exact same houses, and people have been living there for a while. So kids basically were born and they grew up in this area that looks so homogenous. Like every house looks the same, every block looks the same, and that takes away your sense of identity. Like you can't identify yourself with an area. Like, you know how as a kid you go like, yeah, I live in this house next to the blue house, or you know, like there's something that you can think of as your house, and that really affects your mentality growing up.
Right.
You know, your sense of belonging.
I wonder in that situation, maybe there's been studies done on this, but like, would you be more likely to have like the inside of the house look way different, or some like be more influenced to make the inside look very, very different or something?
Right. Go wild.
Yeah.
I hope so. I mean, and now that people have lived there for so long, they started like painting the outsides in crazy colors, or they the murals and things, so that they, you know, separate themselves from just this mass of same exact buildings, you know?
I guess it's not throughout all of humankind. I guess it's really based on the society you grew up in, but how just so many of us want to stand out in some way, to like show we're a little different, even if it's just a color of a house. I know there's plenty of societies that they don't want that, and it's like all about the collective. But it's just interesting how that some of us have that need.
Yeah, well, even in those societies where people are controlled and, you know, it's all about collective, you still have these people who have a need. So like, you know, Japan comes to mind, and they go crazy and they look, you know, in a very, very eccentric way because they want to like define themselves. So like, oh, I'm not the same as them. Those guys are robots, you know?
I'm wondering if it's because I was reading this thing a few months ago about like sexuality, and how some people's this is all like theories and stuff. I don't know if any don't listen to me, but they're like how some people's brains are built for like polyamory or whatever, and some people's brains do not function that way, and there's no like one thing. It's just how, and I wonder if it's similar, like some people are just built to just want to be in a group and blend right in, and some people are just not meant for that.
Right.
You get unlucky or lucky based on what society you're born into.
Right. And it's so, yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah. And then it still kind of comes through whether or not you're allowed to. You're still like, you know, if you have to wear black suit, you'll wear like red socks with it, whatever, you know, because you want to be different.
It sounds so arbitrary too. It's like, oh, what's the big deal? Like, it's just clothing. But there's something so important to some of us about that. I don't really know how to talk about it in any like intelligent kind of way, but it's when you say it out loud, it sounds like oh, because I want to wear a green hat because no one else has one. It's like, so freaking what? But there's something deep a bit. There's some deep seated, I don't know. I'm gonna write a paper on this one day and impress everybody.
Yeah.
I need time to think about it.
But yeah, you're touching on some interesting topics, and it requires some serious research, so I'll be counting on you on
that. All right, so hear me out, okay? Me and you teaming up, okay, and we're gonna do the first building made out of hair, human hair. I'll travel the world and you'll travel the world, and we'll do like sort of like meet in the middle thing, and we'll just get hair from a whole bunch of different people for like a year, and then we create a structure of just hair. What do you say?
I'd say that would be awesome. Creepy, but awesome. And I'll tell you why, because hair is surprisingly strong. It's one of the strongest materials out there. Like if you stretch the hair, there's like so much for the thickness it has, like until it breaks. So I think you're onto something really interesting there.
We're gonna need a lot of hairspray.
Yeah, a lot of hairspray, but also, it's going to be nice and warm in there like a cocoon.
So your site is called Ruso. The reason I brought up hair will come up in a little while, but so your site is called Ruso is Sleeping.
Yes.
Do you sleep a lot, or why is it called?
I used to sleep a lot. Every opportunity I'd go just like pass out and sleep like 12, 14 hours. I can't do it anymore. I wish I could, but like even today I woke up with anxiety of elections. Older I grow, harder it becomes to sleep. But sleeping is such a beautiful thing. And a lot of people think like when you sleep, you're wasting time. I strongly disagree with that, because sleeping has such an important part. It's such an important part of how we function as humans, so it helps you physically to like clean up your body and your brain, right? And also it helps you put things in the right folders without you being involved. So, and dreams are fantastic. Like, who doesn't like to dream?
Yeah. I have major issues I have an interesting relationship with sleep and dreams and stuff. Yeah.
Tell me more.
Maybe interesting isn't the right word, but complicated. I don't dream that I remember often, but I very often have nightmares, and I also have major sleep issues. And so I totally agree with you that like if I could just lay down and go to sleep and get like an 8 hours of sleep, that would be awesome. That would be so good. I really feel like my life would be better because of it. You could tell, like when my insomnia kicks in really bad, I have like right now is literally one of these times where it's been really bad. Like I have trouble more often than I usually do thinking and speaking. Like the words don't come out as naturally as they usually do, or whatever in context of me. I
think also, if I'm not like misremembering, sleeping has to do a lot with that part of the brain too. That clears your head in that sense. If you lack the sleep, then it affects that area. So I'm not surprised, but yeah, I don't know. Like the idea of insomnia is one of the scariest things to me.
I'm lately, especially now that I'm being recorded, I'm trying to like choose my words wisely. Because I was going to say it's like torture, but I don't want people to be upset that I use that word and like, oh no, but I don't know any other way to describe it. Like it feels like you are stuck somewhere you don't want to be and you can't get out. And like month after month, it starts to feel like torture. Like I just can't do it. I can't sleep. Ugh. Anyway.
Right. No, I mean, I think it's torture. I agree. That would be a torture for me.
When you lay down, like, do you generally fall asleep easily?
Yeah, because generally I'm really tired. But if I don't, I learned the trick over time that I realized that like my face muscles are so tense thinking about something.
Right.
And I slowly like release them, and I feel like how heavy my body is, and it just like sink into sleep like that.
Do you ever use
try it out?
Sleep mask? Do you ever use like a sleep mask? No, okay. Yeah, I have to. I wake up. If there's any type of light, I'm up immediately. I'm going to start experimenting with earplugs as well. Do you remember your dreams often?
I do. Yeah. I had a really disturbing dream the other day, if you'd like to hear.
Yeah, please.
And it's a reoccurring dream. Like every time I can't express myself. I had this dream that I was trying to say something, and it sounds funny, but it was so frustrating. And my mouth was full of bubble gum. And I was trying to say it, but it was just so packed with bubblegum, I couldn't make the words come out of my mouth. So then I would dig my fist into my mouth, and I was trying to pull it out, and it was this endless supply of like bubblegum that was not coming out.
Was it at least tasty bubblegum?
It was great tasting bubblegum. At least that, yeah. But I have very vivid dreams, and I like remembering them. I think that also helps me sometimes to kind of draw. But yeah, I really enjoy dreams, even if they're creepy ones.
It definitely, I mean, based on the little I know, it definitely shows you in your work. There's a very dreamlike quality to a lot of what you do. It looks like it's pulled from dreams. Have you ever tried lucid dreaming?
No.
Okay. Yeah, me either. It freaks me out. But yeah,
when I was sorry.
No, go on, please.
Yeah, so I was in grad school, and one of the projects that we were designing was a sleep center. Do you know what a sleep center is?
Is that where you go to, like, you get all hooked up to the shit and they study your sleep?
Yeah, like if you have some sleep disorder,
right, like
that,
apnea or whatever.
Sleep apnea, or so there's so many really, really like messed up ones. Like there's one called, sleeping beauty disorder, where you go to sleep and like you can't wake up for months.
The opposite of what I have, basically.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if that one's better. And everything from sleepwalking to like sleep talking and all those little ones, right? And or like out of body experiences and paralysis. So we were doing research in sleep disorders, and I got so into it, like very, very interested. So that's kind of when I started drawing dreams for the first time.
Wait, what was this? How long ago?
I would say 9 years ago.
Okay.
8-9 years ago. Yeah, so I got really into it, and we had to illustrate our dreams and build models of our dreams, and it's really hard because dreams don't have a physical quality to them, so you have to kind of assign or figure out how to do it, which was really interesting. And yeah, so that's when I started like drawing my nightmares and things like that, and it slowly got into it morphed into something else. I don't know if you saw, like I did a zine where I didn't know, but apparently most of the people, there are certain types of dreams that everybody shares, like globally. Dreams
Is
about
teeth one of them, like your teeth coming out?
Yeah, like teeth coming out. You find yourself nude on the street, and
I do that in my waking life. Exams.
So. Like all kinds of like dreams of falling, failing exam, finding like insects or snakes in your bed, and things like that. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to illustrate those. So I just drew I picked 12 dreams and I drew through them.
Now,
which was really fun for me.
You said the reoccurring dream was the bubblegum dream. Did you say that or no? Was that reoccurring?
Yeah.
So you get that often.
Been reoccurring. I've been getting it lately. Before that, I would get tsunami dreams.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have environmental destruction dreams, like all
you do
nightmares. Yeah. Like tornadoes. Like and they're kind of like, it almost feels like the same dream where I'll look up in the sky and the clouds don't look right, and I have this horrible feeling, but everyone around me doesn't realize it yet. It's
right, and you're like, how can you not
bad
know?
is coming?
Yeah.
There's one, like I just see this like smiling face nodding in the clouds at me, and it's like, and I know only it's not like, oh, it's in my head, but for some reason only I am noticing it, and it's like the terror of like, that thing is telling me something terrible is about to happen, and it wants to frighten me and let me know first. Like, and no one believes me. I'm like, there's a freaking face in the clouds, but no one will freaking look.
Oh man, that sounds horrifying.
But do you have any other reoccurring dreams?
No, well, I used to have another one where I knew there was this like serial killer slashing my family members, and I had to so it was really bloody, and there was a lot of flying involved.
Yeah, flying?
So it could be. Yeah, it was a flying dream. It was very bizarre. Yeah, and
was
a lot
serial
of
killer flying?
Stuff. No, I was flying when I was defeating him. But it was like a Tarantino style, like blood gushing everywhere. It's so gross.
I like how you said defeat. So you beat the serial killer in the dream.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it would take me the entire dream, but I would figure it out. It was like a machete thing.
That's incredible. I don't know that I've ever won in a dream. That's pretty incredible. No. That's incredible. So you just flew around defeating this serial killer.
Yeah, I think because I had seen the dream many times, I would know, like, okay, it would be like a video game that you play.
So that's kind of like,
you would crack it eventually.
It's kind of like,
I guess so. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Huh. That's really interesting. I've done it by accident a few times, but I know people practice doing it. Like,
I've never practiced it. It was more like, I know I've been here before.
Right.
What do I do? Yeah.
They say like a few things to try. I don't know if this is true. Is like, if you're not sure if you're dreaming or not, like shut off a light and see what happens. Because apparently,
interesting.
You can't really see darkness in dreams. None of what I'm saying, that fact check everything I'm saying. And then another one is like, try to go like this to your palm, because apparently in a dream it won't hit anything. Your hand will keep on going through.
Whoa, I want to try that now.
Yeah. So those are like two things I read a while ago to try. I've never done it in a dream, but apparently those are the things that'll make you realize you're in a dream.
Huh. I'm gonna give that a try and I'll let you know.
Yes, please message me. Does being an architect like ever factor into your dreams?
No. No, my dreams are kind of stripped away from all the architecture in a weird way.
Yeah.
It's more about relationships and people and that's the stories. Really cool. It's not about environments.
Your brain's like, yeah, we did all that shit already.
Right. It's part of your work. I wish I could though. Like that would be really cool if I could, but
just these awesome structures that are impossible.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I did have one dream that I went back to Chicago and this building I worked on as part of my studio project, as if like Chinese had built it and it was all fucked up. So, oh, sorry. Am I allowed to use the F word?
Yeah. Go. I curse all the freaking time. So.
Okay. So it was like a really, really, really poorly built version of my building, and I was so angry.
Like, who designed this shit?
Right. Why is it so reflective? It has mirrors everywhere. What's going on? It was bad. But that was like I think that's the only one I can remember. That was like very architectural.
Is there like maybe it's a full dream, but like, is there like a fragment of a dream you had in childhood? Even if it's something mundane that has stuck with you all these years?
Oh yeah. That was the very first dream I remember. I was maybe 4. And I was in the clouds with a big crow.
A big crow?
And the crow was teaching me how to fly. And then he just kicked me off the clouds and I was falling and I woke up.
All right, well, now we know how you learned to fly to defeat the crow. Some tough love taught you how to fly.
Some tough love from a crow.
That's the name of your next art piece. Some tough love from a crow. I like that.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you for that.
You definitely have a thing with hair in your art. Like there's like flowing long hair, big beards. Has hair like always fascinated you, or is this just something that happens?
It wasn't really a thing for me until I guess my hair. Most of my drawings are autobiographical, so I would start with I used to have really long hair. And when I drew myself, I drew myself with very long hair, and then I just started exaggerating, and it was very dynamic. But also, hair, like in mythology, is so interesting, right? It has to do with your strength, and But yeah, it just became a symbol of self-expression in a weird way. But also, like when it's about beards, it's more about the femininity in men, because like men who grow very long beards and groom it very, seriously, like they apply things in it. To me, in my mind, it's like that's them being very tender. They're showing their tenderness.
They're caring for something. Yeah, it makes sense.
They're caring for their beard like women would care for their hair, which is but it almost goes against sometimes the message they're trying to send, about like you being tough, a lumberjack with a long beard, but then they like really go for it,
Yeah, they gotta make it look nice.
Right. So I think that's fascinating to me. And, I applaud them for taking care of themselves.
Right.
And, they should embrace their feminine side a little more too. But in general, like I was typically trying to kind of like show how like in my mind, it's a little comic that, those two kind of masculinity and that tenderness kind of almost go against each other. But I would exaggerate it more. There's
certain things in life that no matter who you are, what gender you are, anything, if you're doing it, you can't look tough, and I think caring for a beard is one of them. It doesn't matter, like you just can't look cool doing it,
or dyeing
or
your
tough,
hair,
I should
like
say. Right. It's just one of those things. That's one of the reasons I don't have a big beard. I have zero patience to take care of it. It just gets gross, and like I'm like, I don't want to deal with this shit. Forget it, and I'll just shave it off.
Right, you have to like groom it and trim it and like shape it nicely.
So that's like your attraction to hair. It's so it seems like there's like an emotional connection to like taking care of long hair that interests you.
In certain ways, yes. Like I don't draw long hair that much anymore. I guess I used to be much more romantic too. Now I'm not, so that kind of went away with it in an interesting way. So now, I mean, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's no coincidence that you don't draw long hair so much anymore and no longer have long hair.
That too, yes. But yeah, like it was all about like if I felt emotional, it would be like hair in the wind, and
yeah. Huh. All right. So there's an illustration of yours that caught my eye from 2017. At least that's what it said, and it was like inspired by my recent trip home. Lots of cups of tea, lots of talks.
Yeah.
Do you remember? You know what I'm talking? Okay, I latched onto that. Because like it's just basically what I assumed was a family sitting around. Some of them have multiple heads and they're sitting around a table. And I latched on there because I'm like, my family's Italian as fuck. So like being around the table and everyone talking at once is for us. It's more coffee and screaming, but like I still latched onto that. Was that a family thing or was that friends?
It's everything. It's everything. It's like when I go to Georgia and we have a gathering, it can be family, can be friends. Everybody talks at the same time, and they ask you a question and they want to know the answer, but halfway through the answer they get distracted and they take that conversation elsewhere, and then they bring it back half an hour later. So it's like everybody talking at all times. I was thinking too, I don't know if you've, probably not, but if you've ever heard like Georgian polyphonic music, like traditional music, and it's all like, typically you have 7 different voices and they all diverge, and it's like they all go their own ways. And sometimes you're like, where is this thing going? And then they come back. And I was like, oh, that just makes so much sense. But it didn't hit me until I was an adult. Like, of course, that's how we talk. And even though you think like they're not listening to me when I'm answering their question, they still listen while they're still talking to other person. It's a whole like cultural thing that I think I lost. I used to be better at it, and now it's like a cultural shock. Every time I go home, I'm like, wait, what's going on? Like, which conversations do I follow? But people like from like across the table, like kind of like reach to you and like, you know, when you think that they're talking about something else, or what's going on. But I guess Italians would do the same.
I mean, when the few times I've had people come to family get-togethers, a lot of the time they're just like, what the fuck is going on? It's like, screaming. There's like food. Hey, you want one of these? There you go. Like there's like conversations that stop and end and like take weird turns, and it's like so loud, and the people are just like, I had no idea what to do in that situation.
Right, it's exactly what it is. Yeah,
that's really funny.
That's funny that you could relate to that drawing, but yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, immediately I was like, that feels like being with my family. Even the multiple heads, I don't know your reason for making multiple heads, but that's what it feels like. It feels like everyone has multiple heads, they're having a couple of conversations at once, this, that.
Yeah, and like if I recall it, like I drew multiple mouths and ears on people because they're like eavesdropping on 3 conversations at the same time, and they stop talking to you for a second to answer somebody else's conversation. It's great.
Yeah, it's a really good image. If you you don't have to go into the specifics if you don't want to, but is there a memory, and if you share one, I'll share one too, but if you don't, is there a memory that's floating around in your brain that if you could, you would wipe and get rid of completely?
Interesting.
And again, if the answer is yes, but you don't want to get into what it is, that's totally fine. That's an acceptable answer.
I don't think so. My first reaction was like, oh, maybe something embarrassing that happened to me. But older I've grown, I kind of tell them as a joke. Like, you know, I did this thing that was so stupid, and I just tell it. Like, once I accidentally spray painted my face when I was building a model, you know, like things like that. I can think of a memory that'd be like, oh, I'd rather not have that. I feel like everything that I went through was the reason why I'm here and why I'm the way I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So I don't think I can think of anything off the top of my head.
I feel like that I might be reading too much into this, but that says a lot about you, that like you seem comfortable with who you are, and that taking a memory away, even if it wasn't a good memory, you'd be like, oh, I'd lose a little bit of myself and I like where I'm at right now. Is that me reading too much into it?
No, I think that's probably right. Yeah, like, you know, when I was growing up, I was pretty awkward in a lot of ways. And people would be like, oh, like she's strange, she's weird, you know. And older I grow, like more, you know, more I grow into an adult, the more I understand that it's fine not to be like other people. Right. So anything that would hurt me back then, I'm like, oh, it's fine, because that meant that, you know, I was not like them.
Right.
And back to what we were talking about, like wanting to not blend into the mass, you know. In my mind, I always wanted to not be like the mass. But I don't want to sound like, you know, like a hipster.
Right. No.
But, you know, like I was not into things that most of the girls my age were into, you know, like I would not dress up. I was more of a tomboy too growing up.
Right.
And I was pretty awkward and very kind of introverted. And older I grow up, I mean, I'm like, that's just who I am.
Right.
I'm fine being that, and people that I surrounded myself with are people who appreciate me for, you know, for me.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
I can be comfortable with that.
Yeah, that's great that you're in like, that's a good spot to be in. I'm not there yet, but that's a really good place to be. But yeah, like you, like growing up, I definitely I wouldn't say I consciously stood out, like, because I wanted to be. I don't exactly, I haven't put a lot of thought into why I did what I did, but in high school, I did a lot of like, you know, like big green hair, like big mohawk at certain points. And it's like, yeah, I didn't have to do that, but I had this urge to I don't know if it was to stand out. I don't know what it was. It was like a lot of experimentation with how I looked.
Right. It's also like looking for yourself, right?
Yeah, right.
You want to understand, like, oh, I'm not that, I'm also not that. You're kind of going through the list and trying things out. And that's a lot of like being a teenager, is like trying different personalities and figuring out which one fits you. I haven't gone crazy with my looks. I wish I did, but I didn't. It was more like an internal thing. And people that I would hang out with, and, you know.
Yeah. Did you hang out with groups of people that I mean, I'm sure everyone has this, but like, we're like, oh, these actually aren't my people. I got to get out of this group.
Oh, all the time. Yeah. It's interesting because like I've been living abroad for 12 years. And the first time I left, I noticed that there's this trend, and maybe a lot of people who move abroad have the same, or move to a new city. The first group of people that you hang out with is not necessarily the people who end up being your friends. It's more like, we're all here because we just moved.
Yep.
And then you slowly like figure out where you fit.
Have you ever had surgery? I know this is nothing we were just talking about, but
no, I have not. I broke my nose and my finger, but all of them were like, oh, it's not broken.
So wait, so you definitely broke your nose?
Yeah.
Oh wow, how'd that happen?
Skiing.
Oof.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought. But like when I broke my finger skiing too, I remember I went to my coach and I'm like, hey, check this out. And my thumb was like big and black and like super swollen. He's like, oh, if it was broken, you would not be standing like so calm. And I'm like,
what?
So you're not gonna look at it? Like, what am I supposed to do?
I've broken bones and was standing and walking around. I don't think that's true.
So I guess like maybe because like me being a girl and not crying for it was a sign that it was not broken. And I'm like, dude, but my finger is like black and blue and I can't move it. Like it hurts. So yeah, but I haven't had a surgery so far.
Right. Are those the only two?
What triggered that question?
Oh,
It's one of
just a
the
random
30 questions.
it's just a random ass thing. Like there's a lot of questions like some of the questions I pick from, and not all of them are written down, some of them just come out. I ask to people in real life, and it's funny. So much of the time people be like, what was your motive for asking that? And I literally have to say like just pure curiosity. Like nothing about you stood out. I just
you look like someone with a lot of surgeries.
Yeah. Person definitely had a few surgeries. It's nothing like that. And some people, like the question, depending on the question, they'll get like not paranoid, but like they'll get like defensive. Like, why would you ask something like that? What is it about me that made you ask that? I'm like, absolutely nothing. I ask like random questions all the time. But I guess because not everyone does that. Everyone wants to find a motive. And there's just not always a motive. Sometimes there is, but for the most part, there is not a motive besides curiosity.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And like I've never asked that question to anyone too. So I was just wondering what triggered it.
Yeah, I think it's more internal for me because I bond over pain, physical or emotional. So I always those kind of questions I'll ask. I guess it's looking for connection. Maybe I don't really know. I think it has something to do with that because like pain, whether like I said, emotional or physical, is something I latch onto in other people. So that's probably why I ask questions like that. I have a few more questions here, and then we're gonna wrap up. I don't want to take too much of your time, and I haven't seen the cat yet, which is upsetting to me.
Oh, the cat's in the other room now, but I'll show both of them.
Did you have a hobby growing up that you no longer have now?
Yeah, I was dancing ballet.
Oh, okay, awesome.
And I really, really loved it. And the reason I dropped dancing is because I was like 13 and I thought it was not cool to dance it. Yep. So I just made up a reason. But yeah, I really wish I could still do it.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing with like guitar. Like I played for a while, and then one day I was just like, it wasn't because it was not cool in my mind, but I was just like, it's like, I don't want to practice this freaking thing. Forget it. And I always regretted that. I mean, technically I could pick it up now, but it's just not the same. When you're younger, it just feels different.
Oh, I know. Like my mom forced me to take piano classes and I loathed it. Like reading notes to me was the biggest torture. I was 8.
Right.
And we had this teacher come home for me and my sister, and she would teach us singing and piano. And I remember I was so furious, and this is the first and the last time I've done anything like that. I got up and I started like pounding my fist on the piano. I was like, I don't want to play. And I close it and I'm like, no.
I love that image of you doing that.
Right. And the woman got so upset for an 8-year-old girl. She just got up and she left and she never came back. And my mom was like, what happened? Like, does she realize you're a kid? Like, why didn't you talk to her?
Yeah, that is weird. Like, you're a kid. She's just like, fuck this, I'm leaving. Like,
right. It's like, oh, so rude. And she got up and left.
Wow. All right. It sounds, you get along with both of your parents?
I do. Yeah. I had when I was growing, like my parents, they met in architecture school, and you know, my mom didn't really practice, and my dad used to, and I went to a really crappy school. So my motivation of like doing anything was very low, and my dad was like always on my back, like you can't become a good architect if you don't work harder, you know. Right. So we would fight a lot, all the time, but you know. Again, like older I grow, like we became like close friends now. Yeah. It took some time to like understand why he was on my back. And then I think I gained some of his respect as a colleague, and you know, kind of became friends again. But I'm pretty close to both of them.
That's so cool. I mean, they sound like, based on just what you said now, they sound like all their advice basically came from experience in their lives. Like, listen, this is what you have to do. I wish my parents had like the love and the will for me. I mean, we had some major issues with both of them. They split up when I was young. So, but all that aside, they both at their core had like the love and this want, this desire for me to do well, but neither of them had the experience to really explain how. So it's just like, you just got to do something, but there was no experience to back it up. Whereas your parents seem like, no, listen, I know what the hell I'm talking about. This is what you have to do.
Right. And yeah, I guess if I had a different profession, it would be different.
That's really cool.
Because I went down the same path, he was like, no, you need to work so much harder. Like, especially as a woman in construction, it's like there's so many road bumps. Then, especially if you don't excel at what you do, it just becomes even harder and harder.
Is that still true now, or do you think you've like kind of passed all of it?
It's still true.
Yeah.
I worked on construction and, a lot of harassment and all kinds of things. It's kind of gross and funny at the same time. Like, really?
Wow.
But I would get double amount of shit because I was a woman and I was young. Like, I was somebody would associate me to their daughter.
Yeah,
and they would not take orders from their daughter.
Yep.
I get it, but also I'm over 30, so it's not like I'm a teenage girl and you won't like listen. I mean, even so, I think everybody's position should have a value. And when we're in a professional world, the reason why I'm running a project is because my company has trust in me. So you can have some faith in me too and just listen, but the testosterone would just get in the way so many times. So it just get pounded all the time. It was like, impossible.
Sorry, I didn't cut you off. Go on.
No, go for it.
I was gonna say, is your impression that it stems from like feeling inadequate from them or something? Like, oh, I don't want this person who's younger than me and a woman to be above me? Or like, what is your impression generally?
On that specific project that I have in mind, a lot of it had to do with that. Like, I had to basically train people to like, hey, this is how it's done. And that coming from a young woman was like a painful moment. Or being corrected, that would make a statement and I'd be like, oh, actually, this is how it is. But I had to kind of grow a thicker skin too. In that way, it really helped me.
Yeah.
However hard it was for me, it really helped me. But in the end, I was like, you know what? Not worth it.
So what you're saying is you cut off your thick hair, but you grew a thicker skin.
Exactly. Yeah. I turned it into an armor.
Yeah. All right, let's do. I have a few more, but I'm just gonna do like two. So if you could bottle a feeling, what comes to mind? Like for me, like getting into a warm robe after a shower. If I could bottle that feeling to have whenever I felt like it, is there something that pops up in your head that you would like to bottle?
Oh yeah, like having a really, really, really deep sleep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think they make drugs for that. I think that is bottled. But yeah, so like that ultra relaxed, like you're drooling and you're just like
right, it's warm and cool, like you're warm in your blanket and it's slightly cold and it's just so nice.
That's what I need.
Yeah, listen, I would send that bottle to you.
Yes, I'm gonna work on mine, you work on yours, and then we'll like try. We'll see how we
right, yeah.
Can you think of an item, like a physical item in your childhood, whatever pops in your mind like now that means a lot to you that you like still think about sometimes? Anything that comes to mind, like and it could be a stuffed animal, it could be something someone gave you.
It's very strange. When I was a kid, I idolized my grandpa. Like my grandpa was everything to me. So, and he wore this apron. Like he loved building stuff, and he wore this apron, and his apron was full of stuff that he would find on the road. Like when I'd go for a walk, or his pockets. Like would go for a walk, and he would find this like a screw on the sidewalk, and he would pick it up and put it in it. So I kind of think about this. The first time I noticed him do that was a screw, and I'm like, what is he doing? That was so puzzling to me. That just like first thing that hit my head. I don't know why, but yeah.
Now you said buildings, like he used that screw to build something, or he just collected
he would just
items?
he would collect it, and then he would he's the type of people who constantly like have projects at home. So he would like build a table and put it in the garden, or something like that.
That's so cool.
I don't know what happened to that screw, but I just remember being really puzzled that he would just like put it in his pocket.
All right, we gotta find that screw. I'm gonna make a Craigslist ad right now.
Grandpa screw.
I love that though. I wish we could find that, make like a necklace out of it or something.
Yeah, that would be really nice. But he has like, he had this like in his workshop, tons of drawers full of screws. So it's just probably in one of them somewhere.
Do you have any tattoos?
I don't.
Okay, well, when you get one,
I am considering one. I'm considering one.
Get his freaking screw.
Oh, get the screw.
Tell me a little bit about Moonlab 42. What's going on with it?
So my family back home, I was helping them start a concept store. And you know, we have a space, they set it up. It was just about to, you know, when we were expanding, we had workshops and stuff. I mean, I was helping from here, but you know, and then the virus hit, so it closed down, and it's still closed. And we've been kind of fantasizing about all sorts of ways to expand. And so my husband John and I were sitting the other day, and we're like, oh, like what if we do it? Can we just like pretend that, you know, we're just not pretend, like we would make like a satellite store of whatever's happening in Tbilisi and just like do an online thing here, and do this kind of a connection, because there's so many really talented people in Tbilisi that don't get exposure because the market is just so small. And then there's so many talented people in New York that would never really, you know, probably find themselves in Tbilisi. We wanted to create this kind of a link, so we have a store here that could potentially have like mostly New York based artists, but then also eventually bring some Georgian artists here, and you know,
that's so
vice
awesome.
versa. So we'll see. We just you know, we do everything very impulsively, so we just jumped on it and opened accounts, and you know, yeah, we're putting things out, and now we want to do a little pop-up. Hopefully that will take place. We have our eye on this local coffee shop that we love in Harlem, so we'll see. Hopefully that works out, and you know, given the elections and whatever is about to come. But eventually, yeah, we'll kind of expand the online store and then bring things back and forth between Tbilisi and New York.
I love that.
That's the plan.
I think that, I mean, I have a feeling that human connection is at the core of where we all need to go. And I feel like slowly we're starting to realize that stuff that happens in almost any part of the world is going to affect another part of the world. We're so intertwined.
Right.
And little things like this, like what you're planning on doing, bringing artists together from different parts of the world, and like, oh shit, like we can bond over this. And then whether you want to or not, you start to care about everybody. Like, oh, they're freaking humans over there. It's hard to think about it. We're not built that way. We're built, whatever's in front of us, that's our world. But really, we're so connected.
Right. And you know, corny, tangible things. No, but it's true, you know, and especially like for me, coming from a country, I mean, our population is 3.5 million people. It's like less than a half of New York City, you know?
Right.
So coming from such a tiny country, and most of the time I'd go like, Georgia, where? But you don't sound Georgian. This is so confusing, you know? So to be like, hey, there's this country that has a lot of talented artists, and introduce my country through that, and then bring some of that here, and then bring some of New York back home, and you know, have this connection building. You know, I think it's almost like being the ambassador, the art ambassador of my country in a way, that would help, you know, build the idea of my country in somebody else's mind who has never heard of it before, you know?
That's freaking great. And I love how you're doing it both ways too, because like some people I speak to are like, oh, I'm just bringing them here, but I'm not bringing it. So the connection's like one way, but when you're like, let's get everyone together so I can check out some other people's art. Like that's fucking awesome. I want to talk to that person. I want to buy something from them, and maybe they'll like something I made. And then there you go. You have a new freaking friend on the other side of the world.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's so awesome.
So I hope it works out. You know, we're kind of in this weird limbo globally. Yeah. So that's why I'm trying to get you on board too.
I mean, I just got to get my ass together and start putting stuff out again. It's been a rough couple years for me.
You know, when you start sleeping again, it's gonna come back.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, I'm waiting on your bottled
the
potion.
Little bottle.
Let's get on that. The last thing is, can you give me, and if you can't think of one, that's fine. I have an alternate question. Can you give me a bad piece of advice that you got, or a bad piece of advice that you gave to someone?
Oh man, that's such a great question. Uh, well, the bad piece of advice I got was when I was in architecture school, my professor would be like, but like, don't work so hard. You know, women don't really end up being architects. You'll just focus on getting married and finding a good husband.
Wow. That's pretty
Yeah.
bad.
Right?
That works really well. I mean, it just makes no sense to like say that to someone who's already in the school.
I know, like I'm in college, and this professor's like, you know, you ask a question, and he's like, you know, don't worry about that because you'll never really get to it.
Oh,
just focus on finding a good husband.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
You heard your
How's that?
Yeah, that's a terrible, terrible piece of advice. That's perfect. All right. Well, look, thank you so much for doing this, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I really enjoyed this. So yeah. I'm looking forward to your series.
And listen, here's what I want you to do: send me pictures of the cats.
Yes.
And I'll put them at the end.
Cats are coming. Great.
All right. I'll see you later.